Judy was boring.
Hello.
Then Judy discovered ChumbaCasino.com.
It's my little escape.
Now Judy's the life of the party.
Oh, baby, mama's bringing home the bacon.
Whoa, take it easy, Judy. The Chumba life is for everybody. So go to ChumbaCasino.com and play over 100 casino-style games. Join today and play for free for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. ChumbaCasino.com. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
How would you like a 15% discount to my daily email, the stack of stuff, the show notes, discounts to the conference, all of that? All you need to do is text the word show to 33777. You'll get the annual subscription with a 15% discount to my daily email. You'll get the stack of stuff, the links to the show notes, discounts to the conference, and so much more. All you have to do is text the word show, SHOW, to 33777. Text show to 33777.
Welcome to the Eric Erickson Show podcast, Hour 1.
Greetings, America. Welcome. It is Eric Erickson here. I hope you've had a great weekend and you got blue skies today. The phone number, if you want to be on the program, 877-973-7425. As always, text Eric to ERICK to 33777. Should you wish to get access to the show notes, the podcast, the live stream, social media, anything. I have a sneeze. Have you ever had one of those? I start the show, it's like I can tell I'm going to sneeze, but I haven't sneezed, so I will continue. It's one of those days. Okay. I got to start with what I think is the biggest story. And I actually genuinely believe this is the biggest story of the day. There is some breaking news I have to deal with first. Doug Burgum, the governor of North Dakota, has suspended his presidential campaign. He had no pulse, never did. He thought he could get in, drop a bunch of money for a time. He bumped up in New Hampshire, then collapsed again as Nikki Haley and Chris Christie got ahead of him and Ron DeSantis stayed ahead of him. His campaign, he never should have gotten in. I mentioned a while back that some consultants somewhere were making a lot of money off of people like Burgum. And I don't know how much those consultants made, but they made too much, and he lost money. He should have never gotten in. Nonetheless, he got in, and now he's getting out. That's the breaking news. But this is, I think, the big story of the day. Go back, if you will, to some statements I made in the last week or so that the Biden administration and the Biden campaign team is essentially going to offer a message to Americans. It's going to be split. One half of it will be a pro-abortion message to rally the faithful and get them to vote. The other half will be to persuadable voters, the Trump's a threat to democracy stuff. But they're going to wind that down, and they're going to go with an overall comprehensive message to everyone. And that message is going to be chaos. That say what you will about Joe Biden, but he provides stability, and Donald Trump provides chaos. In fact, Ann Applebaum of The Atlantic and other publications is on Morning Joe this morning, I believe, saying essentially if Trump gets elected president that Putin's going to invade Poland. No, he's not. Putin wouldn't even invade Ukraine when Trump were president. But that's what they're going to say. Some level of revisionist history and fear-mongering there. They will fear-monger on the chaos. But there's this. This is the story. And I think this is the most important news story today. But it is not getting a whole lot of coverage, and I think it should. Ballistic missiles fired by Yemen's Houthi rebels struck 3 commercial ships Sunday in the Red Sea, while a U.S. warship shot down 3 drones in self-defense during the hours-long assault, the U.S. military said. The Iranian-backed Houthis claimed 2 of the attacks. The strikes marked an escalation in a series of maritime attacks in the Mideast linked to the Israel-Hamas war, as multiple vessels found themselves in the crosshairs of a single Houthi assault for the first time in the conflict. The U.S. vowed to consider all appropriate responses in the wake of the attack, specifically calling out Iran after tensions have been high for years now over Iran's rapidly advanced nuclear program. These attacks represent a clear threat to international commerce and maritime security. The U.S. Military Central Command said in a statement they have jeopardized the lives of international crews representing multiple countries around the world. It added, "We also have every reason to believe these attacks, while launched by the Houthis in Yemen, are fully enabled by Iran." The USS Carney, a Navy destroyer, detected a ballistic missile fired from Houthi-controlled areas of Yemen at the Bahama-flagged bulk carrier Unity Explorer. The missile hit near the ship, the U.S. said. Shortly after, the Carney shot down a drone headed its way. About 30 minutes later, the Unity Explorer was hit by a missile. While responding to its distress call, the Carney shot down another incoming drone. Central Command said the Unity Explorer sustained minor damage from the missile. Two other commercial ships, the Panamanian-flagged bulk carrier number 9 and Sophie 2, were both struck by missiles. The number 9 reported some damage but no casualties. The Sophie 2 reported no significant damage. The Carney, an Arleigh Burke-class guided missile destroyer, has shot down multiple rockets the Houthi have fired toward Israel during the nation's war against Hamas. So, we also have engaged Iranian-backed terrorists in Syria and Iraq. U.S. military positions there carried out attacks, destroying what they said were imminent threats from the Iran-backed terrorists in Iraq and Syria towards the United States. Why is this the biggest story, Erickson? I mean, there are big stories in the United States, but why should this be, in my mind, the biggest story? The one probably no other conservative host is leading their news show with or talk show with. Why is it the biggest? Couple of reasons. One, when Joe Biden became president of the United States, one of the first things Joe Biden did was take the Houthi rebels off the terror list. The man who tells you Donald Trump will bring chaos if he is sent back to office got rid of the Houthi as a terror threat, and yet the Houthi are at war with the United States. They have sent drones and attacks on American military vessels, not just cargo ships, but the USS Carney itself has been targeted by the Houthis. Also, the United States is now very boldly asserting that Iran is behind this all. In fact, in Syria and Iraq, it was actively engaged Iranian terrorist groups targeting American military personnel to kill them. But the Biden administration has continued making progress towards, it presumes in some capacity, a deal with Iran, continues to allow Iran to sell oil on the international stage that it then uses to fund the Houthi and Hamas and Hezbollah and other groups. This administration tells you that Donald Trump will bring chaos to the world, and this administration is seeding terror around the world that is targeting American soldiers and sailors. You can't really make the case that Donald Trump will make it more chaotic when you yourself have brought chaos. This is a really big story. The Houthi rebels, backed by Iran, have engaged the U.S. Navy. We are at war with Iran and pretending we are not. They have attacked American military personnel in Iraq and in Yemen. They have attacked American naval vessels in the Red Sea. They have attacked Israel, our ally. They are continuing to engage in attacks. And in fact, you have the FBI issuing terror warnings in this country that both Hamas and Hezbollah may already be here, having crossed the border. And yet, what is the response of this administration? To continue to allow Iran to fund its terror operations through the sales of oil around the world and giving them access to bank accounts we have long denied them access to. And you want to say Trump would make it worse? How much worse could Donald Trump actually make it? The Biden administration is a destabilizing force on the world stage. Here is the reality. The American media obviously does not like Donald Trump or the Republicans for that matter. They don't like Mike Johnson, the speaker. They don't much care for Mitch McConnell. They don't like the GOP. The only Republicans they like are the ones who attack the GOP. And in their narrative shaping in the press, in the newspapers and the television shows of America, they insist to all of us that Donald Trump would make the situation worse. They insist that Donald Trump is a more destabilizing force, but not just him. Republicans generally. Remember on MSNBC on Friday, they had a conversation about Nikki Haley being an actual extremist. They insist on a world that is not. They insist on a world that doesn't actually exist. It's one they've concocted in their head. It's one where you can have peace with Iran. It's one where no one could stop Vladimir Putin, even though he didn't do anything when Donald Trump was president. Remember, because they rationalized that Trump was some sort of stooge of Putin. That's why Putin didn't need Ukraine when Trump was president, because he was in his pocket. It's all nonsense. It's all nonsense. But they believe in a world where when Democrats are in charge of it, somehow the world is safer. When Bill Clinton was in charge of the world, distracted by cigars and interns in the Oval Office, Al-Qaeda was plotting 9/11. When Barack Obama was president of the United States, he tried to cut a deal with Iran and emboldened Iran, and Iran started funding terror around the world. And Vladimir Putin invaded Ukraine, taking over Crimea. It's not per se Donald Trump. It's Republicans. Republican foreign policy is more America first, robust, strong America foreign policy. The rules of war and engagement for Republican presidents is stronger and more strident. Do you really believe that if George W. Bush or Donald Trump or you name the Republican were not in charge or were in charge, that we would have a different response? I mean, Donald Trump took out Qasem Soleimani. Let's not forget that. Backed by Republicans. What we're seeing is that the Democrats always revert to appeasement. The Democrats always revert to appeasement. Now, let's play this out to the larger, broader point, and this is the ultimate reason why this is the biggest story of the day. The Houthi have launched attacks on Saudi Arabia, on the United Arab Emirates, on the American military, on the American Navy, on Israel, on shipping vessels. They've done it all, funded by Iran. And Joe Biden continues to allow Iran to sell oil on the world stage to fund terror. So how do you think the terrorists of the world see this? I continue to mention West Africa to you. There's been another coup attempt, this time in Sierra Leone in West Africa. While Joe Biden is president, Islamic radicals are strengthening their positions in West Africa. Islamic radicals are at war with the American military in the Middle East, funded by Iran. And this administration continues to turn its back to it all and pretend it's not happening. They will not respond aggressively. They will not throw a punch. The only way to stop the bully is to throw the punch, and this administration refuses to do it. They've decided they're going to go with some sort of appeasement. Meanwhile, they're getting wedgied and swirlied in the international bathroom by a bunch of terrorists. All of this is to say we're probably headed, sadly and unfortunately, to a dangerous time for Americans in the world, because this administration refuses to be aggressive. This administration refuses to respond aggressively to the attacks from terrorists around the world. Houthi rebels in Yemen, funded by Iran, have launched an attack at the United States Navy. And the Biden administration's response was to send out a press release saying, "We know it's you, Iran, cut it out." You really want to make Iran cut it out? Launch some missiles. Do something other than a press release. The next thing this administration is going to do is undoubtedly the dreaded, fearful, terrorizing, awful, Iran will think again, dreaded hashtag. Because, you know, that helped liberate all those girls from the terrorists in Africa. Guys, if you're a small, mid-sized business, you're struggling with HR issues, you have employees not showing up, or you got to do a termination, you need onboarding of employees, maybe there's a sexual harassment complaint. You want an HR manager. You don't want to be the bad guy with your employees. Bambee can play the role of HR for you. $99 a month, available by phone, email, real-time chat. They do onboardings, terminations. They help your team members get to peak performance, and your business stays compliant with changing HR regulations, regardless of which state. They're great. Now, they're U.S.-based. You got somebody to talk to who's dedicated to your team. They give you access to HR expertise, and they add personal touches. So even though they're outsourced by your company, they really feel like they're a part of your team. That matters. Go to Bambee.com right now. Type in Eric Erickson under podcast. When you sign up, it'll help my show. Bambee.com, 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 Eric Erickson in the podcast tab.
With the Lucky Land Slots, you can get lucky just about anywhere.
This is your captain speaking. We've got clear runway and the weather's fine, but we're just going to circle up here a while and get lucky. No, nothing like that. It's just these cash prizes add up quick. So I suggest you sit back, keep your tray table upright, and start getting lucky.
Play for free at LuckyLandSlots.com. Are you feeling lucky? No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
Greetings, welcome. Delighted to have you with me. The phone number, 877-973-7425. The call screener has returned. Glad to have him back on his feet. Now, I got to play you this audio. This is Rashida Tlaib. No. It's Jayapal. I thought it was Tlaib. It's Jayapal. Is with Dana Bash, who is Jewish, on CNN yesterday. Dana Bash, it was delightful to see her push back on this woman. Listen to this.
With respect, I was just asking about the women, and you turned it back to Israel. I'm asking you about Hamas. In fact,
I already answered your question, Dana. I said it's horrific, and
okay.
I think that rape is horrific, sexual assault is horrific. I think that it happens in war situations. Terrorist organizations like Hamas obviously are using these as tools. Mm-hmm. However, I think we have to be balanced about bringing in the outrages against Palestinians. Yeah. 15,000 Palestinians have been killed in Israeli airstrikes, 3/4 of whom are women and children.
And it's horrible, but you don't see Israeli soldiers raping.
Well, Dana, I think
women.
I don't want this to be the hierarchy of oppression.
The hierarchy of oppression. Have you noticed that the whataboutisms are permitted when it comes to Israel? So, for example, you had the Charlottesville situation during Donald Trump's tenure, and Republicans would say, well, what about Black Lives Matter? What about these protests? And what about that? It's white supremacist. It's bad. It's bad, and it's also you can't minimize it or distract from it. But you've got Dana Bash asking about women being raped by Hamas, and you've got the Hamas caucus from Congress saying, well, what about the bad stuff Israel's done? We need to put it in its proper context. I'm sorry, there's no whatabouting for raping women and chopping off the heads of babies. Israel's not doing that. I am today years old learning that you can what about rape? Believe all women stops at Israeli women. Don't believe the Israeli women. It's remarkable to me that the Democrats themselves are allowing people in the Democratic side to get away with this in a way, when Republicans were all the time accused of trying to distance themselves from white supremacists, but refusing to condemn the white supremacists. The Democrats refuse to condemn Hamas aggressively. They refuse to condemn the protests around the country. They're canceling a Hanukkah celebration in Virginia, for God's sakes, thinking that it somehow is going to embolden people. These people have lost their minds. Standing in the tide of sanity against these insane people is a group like Americans for Prosperity around the country. They're fighting back against Bidenomics. They are targeting the states around the country to roll back Bidenomics, to come up with great common sense ideas to fight back and advance limited government, free markets, and free people. They want you on their side. What you do is you go to americansforprosperity.org/Eric, americansforprosperity.org/ERICK, and you sign up. More than 4 million people already have. They have chapters organized in 36 states. They build an aggressive ground game to help mobilize votes and mobilize activists to go out and educate the entire population on why free markets and free people are a good idea, why school choice is a great idea, why deregulation is great for small business. They educate you so you're the smartest person in the room. What you do is go to americansforprosperity.org/Eric today, americansforprosperity.org/ERICK. Sign up now and fight for free markets and free people around the country.
Hello, it is Ryan, and we could all use an extra bright spot in our day, couldn't we? Just to make up for things like sitting in traffic, doing the dishes, counting your steps, all the mundane stuff. That is why I'm such a big fan of Chumba Casino. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere with daily bonuses. That should brighten your day a little. Actually, a lot. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com. That's ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
Hello there. Welcome. It is Eric Erickson here. The phone number, 877-973-7425, should you wish to be on the program. So it's that time of year. I meant to do this on Friday because I do this every year. And I got a whole lot of emails over the weekend from listeners saying, hey, don't you need to do this? Well, yeah, I guess I do. It comes on the heels of some news about a Hanukkah celebration being canceled due to the Israel-Hamas conflict in Williamsburg, Virginia. Before I get there, I will placate my angry mob of listeners. We are now in the Christmas season. Some of you are lighting Advent candles or doing Advent calendars. So why is it December 25th? There are a lot of people who are told, and this is the way I learned it in school, is that the Romans had a festival, Saturnalia, at the end of December, and early Christians were masters of weaving pagan celebrations into Christian celebrations to try to mirror them and show, see, look, we're just like the rest of you. And Aurelian, the Emperor Aurelian, had his favorite god was the unconquered sun, and his celebration was December 25th. And the Christians could say, hey, actually, our God conquered death. He's the unconquered sun, and that's a holiday about him. I'm sure you've all heard something similar, that it's Saturnalia or the Feast of the Unconquered Sun. Actually, there is enormous evidence that Christians set Jesus' birthday to December 25th because they were way more interested in his death. Now, you got to understand something about the Jews of the day, and it carried over into the early Christians. The Jews of the day were very convinced that the date that a prophet died coincided with the anniversary of the date of his conception. You got that? The date of a prophet dying coincided with the anniversary of his conception. So if you were a prophet, the day you were conceived, that was also going to be the day you died years later. If it was a March 25th, well, then you were going to die on March 25th years later. So early Christians took two paths. One path was on when did Jesus get crucified? And Jesus, they believed, early Tertullian, one of the early church fathers, figured it to be March 25th, that the crucifixion would have fallen on a March 25th. Well, fast forward 9 months, they knew that conception to birth was 9 months. Where do you land? December 25th. Now, this was established within about 150 years of Christ's death and resurrection. So well before the breakout of the Feast of the Unconquered Sun. Now, concurrent to all of that, the Eastern Church the church was divided into Eastern and Western halves. And so you have the Western half settles on March 25th is the date of crucifixion, and therefore December 25th would be the date of birth. The eastern half was more concerned with the flow of events leading up to Christ's conception, trying to figure out when the resurrection would have happened. And so they knew that, for example, John the Baptist's father was in the temple, and they knew the order of priests that he was in. And if you assumed an unbroken line of priests in the temple, then he would have been in the temple sometime around the end of October. And you fast forward to when the Bible makes the pronouncement of Gabriel to Mary of when she would be with child, and you do the math, that would have come out to the end of March. So if John the Baptist's father, Zacharias, was in the temple at the end of October, then the pronouncement to Mary would have been at the end of March. Oh, in the western half of the empire, Tertullian has already concluded that March 25th would have been the day of the crucifixion. So that now lines up the eastern half and the western half. So if a prophet was conceived on the day that he died, it would have been March 25th. You fast forward 9 months, December 25th. There is actually very little archaeological or historic evidence of early Christians celebrating birthdays, because birthdays were celebrated by the Romans. So the early Christians did not celebrate birthdays, but they noted the deaths of prophets. By about 300 AD, before Constantine had Christianized the empire, there are instances of Christians celebrating Christ's birth on December 25th. What's notable about that is that the Emperor Aurelian decided to do the Feast of the Unconquered Sun. That was his preferred god. The Romans had a pantheon of gods, and occasionally they would come up with new gods for celebration. Aurelian really loved the unconquered sun. They didn't know who it was, didn't know the name of the god, but it was the unconquered sun. He was the god who could not be conquered. And there's actually a lot of evidence that Aurelian set the celebration for his god on December 25th to combat the Christians, not the other way around. All of this is to say that all of the stories you and I learned growing up about Saturnalia and the Feast of the Unconquered Sun, there's actually a growing body of evidence that the Christians set December 25th as Christ's birth, independent of everything else. Doesn't mean they were right, by the way. Doesn't mean they were right. Doesn't mean that's when it happened. But that there's evidence as early as 150 AD that they already presumed his birth would have been around December 25th. Not because of a Roman pagan holiday, but because they were interested in the date of the crucifixion, and they could do the math from there. Now, I tie that all in to say, while you're in the Christmas season, it corresponds to the Hanukkah season for Jews. And Hanukkah is the fantastic story of the 8 days where the menorah continued to burn despite a lack of oil during the Maccabean uprising. And it is celebrated to this day. It is a fantastic holiday. And of course, we have Adam Sandler's fantastic Hanukkah song to go along with it. Except there will be no celebration in Williamsburg, Virginia. It's been canceled. There was going to be a menorah lighting for the second Sunday Art and Music Festival on December 10th. Each month from March to December, the community event hosts artisans, street performers, and food vendors. And Jewish leaders were told the board was not comfortable allowing the Hanukkah lighting at the festival this year. Shirley Vermillion, the festival's founder, said second Sundays are inclusive to different religions or cultures, and the menorah lighting seemed very inappropriate given current events in Israel and Gaza. She said the board would prefer to steer clear of religious affiliations. In the past, Christians and other religious groups had asked to perform at Second Sunday, and those requests were denied as well. But this is one that was already going to be done. They were going to light the menorah, and they are not now. It is being canceled. It's being canceled because they're afraid that by lighting the menorah, they are taking a position in support of Israel against Hamas. I distinctly remember people telling me that Jews and Israel are distinct. We're kind of being exposed to the fact that most of the people who have said that for so long were lying. If you can't celebrate a Jewish holiday because you think you might be affirming Israel, what you are doing is you're tying Jewishness and Israel together, as the same thing. And this is happening more and more. In Philadelphia, crazy stuff happening in Philadelphia. An angry mob of young people chanting for an intifada revolution marched through the streets of Philadelphia Sunday night. They showed up at a restaurant. Goldie is part of Cook and Solo Group. It's co-owned by Israeli-born Michael Solomonov. A small group protested outside Cook and Solo last month. In Fishtown in October, an Instagram post by the Philly Palestinian Coalition called for a boycott of several restaurants, including Cook and Solo. They stood outside the restaurant, a falafel shop, and they chanted, "Goldie, Goldie, you can't hide. We charge you with genocide." That's what they chanted. "Goldie, Goldie, you can't hide. We charge you with genocide." A local CBS affiliate report, quote, "The group of protesters is accused of shouting anti-Semitic remarks, and stickers with pro-Palestinian slogans were reportedly left on the doors, though when CBS Philadelphia checked back early Monday morning, they had been removed." Solomonov, you should know, is a pretty famous chef. He was born in Israel. He was raised in Pittsburgh, focused on Italian cuisine at the start of his career. That changed in 2003. His brother David volunteered for the IDF, was killed by snipers on the Lebanese border. Solomonov now owns a variety of Israeli and Jewish-style restaurants, mainly in Philadelphia. He's also got a great cookbook, by the way. Michael Solomonov, I've got his cookbook. I was in Delaware a couple of years ago. A Republican group asked me to speak up in Delaware, and so I went up to Delaware, and one of the fine people who drove me around sent me a copy of Zahav, A World of Israeli Cooking by Michael Solomonov. It is a brilliant cookbook, by the way. It is a brilliant cookbook. It is just delicious stuff. But it's just remarkable that Michael Solomonov and his restaurant would be attacked. He's not ostensibly like in the streets of Philadelphia flying the Israeli flag. He just happens to be Jewish, born in Israel, and they targeted his restaurants. When Donald Trump was president of the United States, he was accused, in fact, this came up again on Friday on Bill Maher's show, of saying there were good people on both sides in the Charlottesville, Virginia situation. What Dave Rubin pointed out on Friday night is that people like to excerpt that, but in reality, he said he wasn't talking about the neo-Nazis and the white supremacists. There were people on both sides who turned out at that event in Charlottesville who were overshadowed by the neo-Nazis and the white supremacists. People on both sides had come to see what it was all about. But Republicans were told you have to condemn the white supremacists. You have to condemn it. No ifs, ands, or buts. No whatabouts. Condemn the white supremacy. I'm noticing a pattern with Democrats where they can't bring themselves to condemn anti-Semitism without also condemning Islamophobia. You can't just condemn anti-Semitism if you're a Democrat now. The things they accused Republicans of being unwilling to do, they're not willing to do them themselves. They're not willing to just call out anti-Semitism. I don't know Michael Solomonov. I love his cookbook. I've seen him on TV. To have protesters stand outside and target his business is absurd and offensive. More and more often these days, we're seeing this level of depravity from the left, this level of anti-Semitism from the left. And when Democrats are asked to call it out, they can't bring themselves to actually explicitly, bluntly call it out. They've got to bring up Islamophobia as well. They can't just call it out. They blasted Republicans for having more complex statements when Trump was president than just calling out white supremacy. Why can't you just clearly and distinctly call it out? Some of us did, but a lot didn't. They wanted to call out and criticize a lot of stuff, including white supremacy, and the Democrats were way upset. And now what you see is the Democrats doing the same thing. They're so afraid of alienating votes. It's not about right or wrong. It's about power. And because they're afraid of alienating pro-Hamas voters, they can't bring themselves to call it out. That they can't bring themselves to just call out anti-Semitism. They've got a what about it with Islamophobia. They can't be clarion calls to clear truth because they're afraid of losing votes. They're the moral cowards they said the Republicans were. And while all of this is gone, the world just continues to descend into all sorts of chaos. Chaos that the Democrats would blame on Trump, but it's happening on their watch, including in the markets. That's why my friends at Swiss America have been sounding the alarm about the secret war on cash and the all-out assault on our freedoms. They got soaring interest rates, squeezing the economy, banks teetering on collapse. Swiss America can educate you about how to save your hard-earned assets now. You can go read their report, The Secret War on Cash. Your copy's free. All you do is call or text 800-289-2646. 800-289-2646. The all-out war on cash includes digital forms of currency. It's spreading. You're more likely to encounter more and more businesses that don't want you using cash, just credit cards, so they can see what you're spending on. All you do, you call or text 800-289-2646. Mention my name, Eric Erickson. Call or text 800-289-2646. You can also go to SwissAmerica.com/Eric, SwissAmerica.com/ERICK, or call or text my name to 800-289-2646. Message data rates do apply.
Okay, round two. Name something that's not boring.
A laundry? Ooh, a book club. Computer solitaire, huh?
Ah, sorry, we were looking for Chumba Casino. That's right, ChumbaCasino.com has over 100 casino-style games. Join today and play for free for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. ChumbaCasino.com. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
Hello there. Welcome. It is Eric Erickson here. The phone number is 877-973-7425. Stand by on the phone. Short segment here. This hour brought to you by First Liberty. Building and loan wherever you are in the nation. They can help your business grow. If banks are giving you the runaround, First Liberty makes their own lending decisions. Check them out at firstlibertyga.com. Anywhere in the nation, they can help you. But more importantly, the Frost family just wants to wish you a Merry Christmas and remind you that the reason for the season is Christ, not commercialism. Now, I gotta just mention some stuff to you real quick. I don't know about the college football playoffs. I have said all year long that Georgia as a team they didn't seem as strong as they purported to be. They got stronger over the whole season, but it just they always won, but something just didn't seem right. And then that Alabama game, Alabama didn't win so much as Georgia lost. It's foolishness. Yeah, bad calls, but also just mistakes on their part. But throwing them out and putting Alabama in when Alabama barely beat Auburn that got blown out by New Mexico. I'm kind of baffled by that one. In poor old Florida State. I mean, listen, we're not a sports talk show, but y'all, Florida State, they deserve to be outraged. An undefeated season in the ACC, and they don't make it in. This is the last year this is going to happen. I'm glad they're doing a bigger playoff season next year. That's going to be bigger, but my goodness gracious. I don't think you should have thrown Georgia out. The Alabama Auburn game just after Auburn, and now listen, I'm not saying put Auburn in. I'm just saying, I don't know, maybe put Georgia in and then make, I don't know, Alabama and FSU play a game and see what happens. What a mess. What a mess. Everyone who is aggrieved has a legitimate reason to be aggrieved. But man, the Alabama-Georgia game, that was not Alabama winning. That was Georgia just losing to itself. It was remarkable to watch. Depressingly so for the Georgia fans. Buddy of mine who's a Georgia Tech fan put on Instagram that he's now marked safe from grown men barking at him for a year. The Tech fans became Alabama fans. In any event, we got to move on to other stuff. When we come back, I assume you all have kept up on the Disney stuff. Things aren't looking well there at the Magic Kingdom because they went woke and now they're going broke, and even Bob Iger is realizing it.
Step into the world of power, loyalty, and luck.
I'm going to make him an offer he can't refuse.
With family, cannolis, and spins mean everything.
Now, you want to get mixed up in the family business.
Introducing The Godfather at ChumbaCasino.com. Test your luck in the shadowy world of The Godfather slot.
Someday, I will call upon you to do a service for me.
Play The Godfather, now at ChumbaCasino.com.
Welcome to the family.
VGW Group. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.